Oh man, forgive me for looking like I'm tired. But I can't forget about you and all of the things that are around us. So I am in New York State, and I will read for you from my car in a lovely little rest area because it is a full moon and it is actually really beautiful and kind of sitting over me. And there's a lot going on. There are 6 planets in retrograde. The moon is in Capricorn, like on the edge of it. Come tomorrow, it will jump into mid-Aquarius, which I think is a sudden boost of ingenuity. What is under my nail? Saturn is retrograde with Neptune in Pisces, which is an interesting combination. I do think, given the collective nature of Neptune and the drive, I guess short-sighted drive of Saturn, I do think it might be easy to be led astray, or led in general, be that by, other people or by your emotions, which kind of reminds me of the last thing that I talked about kind of being your own current, I suppose. However, the two of those together can also lend itself to really following your dreams. In the face or wake of all of the outside stimuli and suggestion and expectation, listen to your dreams and follow the smaller joys and maybe seemingly simple things that used to bring you joy that maybe you don't really get to indulge in now. Little things. What made you happy when you were young? What made you happy? What makes you feel inspired? What makes you feel joyful in simple ways? In what ways are you easier or not easy to please, but in what ways are you do you find yourself grateful for the simple things, I suppose? In some ways, I guess that's like the little thoughtful favors that you can do for yourself, but also that, that other people do for you rather than grand gesture. I guess is my ultimate point. On top of the being led with Saturn and Neptune in Pisces, I think Chiron being in retrograde, still in Aries, is a great revisiting time. So maybe, with all of those, that's reoccurring dreams or what have you, or you find yourself sort of reawakening old feelings or old traumas or what have you, or finding maybe a little bit of nostalgia as well. It doesn't all have to be trauma and old situations and exes or whatever the fuck. But don't be led into old faces of yourself or old states of being. Because sometimes those are painful, and sometimes that makes us feel like even if it's not painful, it makes us feel like we're regressing or stagnating rather than progressing or rather than growing. And that can also come with just some hypercritical senses of self rather than truth. But that is the ethereal, mindful nature of Neptune and Pisces. Venus is also retrograde in Leo, and I think and Mars isn't. So I think there's again, maybe being led by our emotions, maybe being led by our frustrations, maybe being led by, I don't know, wanting to take karma in our own hands. It does give me this kind of vengeful feeling. And Eris is also retrograde. So that kind of adds to the agitation, I suppose. When we are led by negative emotions, we lose sight of our core being. We lose sight of our compassion. We lose sight of our kindness. We lose sight of like the good nature in us. So remind yourself of those things. I know the world can be very dark, and I know we don't understand why people are so cruel or evil, but that does not mean that the correct response is an eye for an eye, or that the correct response is to be evil back. That doesn't give room for expansion, if that makes sense. But anyway, while I'm here, let's pick some cards and see what this lovely moon hanging over my head has to say. I'm kind of just adjusting. Funny. Get a bird. Alright, much like you're hanging out with me, and like there are cards in between us, we're going to take some deep breaths together, and I don't know, I do know, and channel this moon and see what it wants to wave in our way. Take a deep breath in, and exhale. Take a deep breath in and exhale. One last deep breath in and exhale. Okay, how do I explain this? Knight of Wands, Nine of Wands, King of Cups. Interesting. A trifecta of very intense energy. However, the King of Cups is the intensity that knows how to like moderate itself, knows how to step back. It's the parent that knows well enough to not yell back. Is the kind of parent that can step back and be like, hey, I need a minute, rather than haul off and exert their power. Quite honestly, that's something that I've seen, or that I've noticed in these generations as they grow, is that my generation, generations before mine, parents seemed to understand their children in terms of like almost like livestock. But there was a power dynamic. It was, I created you so I can destroy you. It was, I do as I say, not as I do. It was because I said so. Rather, and that excused negative behavior rather than mindfulness and what, gentle parenting or whatever people call it now. Where parents respect their children, and are willing to hear them out, and also not quick to overexert force or power over, because our children are equals, if not more sacred. And that also goes for the little in us, and those that perhaps need more support from us, and maybe even like ideas that we have that we sort of undercut for fear of failure or lack of confidence or fear of disappointing ourselves in the same ways that we, were afraid of disappointing our parents or what have you. That relationship of parent and child does exist within yourself as well, like within your energy in older states and younger states of being. I have seen that actually in meditation. I've stepped into different, timelines and seen myself age as older, and seen that version of myself almost like not almost, very much therapizing. I don't know if that's a word. Very much like counseling a younger and still troubled version of myself. And it brought me a lot of clarity to see things in that way. But, so, going back. Nine of Wands, that is also that intensity. Let us not use our intensity for sake of exerting power. Power dynamics are abused. What a weird, capitalistic, Protestant kind of concept. Hierarchies shouldn't exist within unconditional love. Hierarchies should not exist within unconditional love. Power dynamics in relationships, I have a very gray area opinion on, but that is a different concept, or a different conversation for a different day, for a different community, perhaps. I don't know if you're watching this, you're probably well aware of my indulgence in that. Anyway, all of these are also inverted. So this is a lot of internal conflict, which, goes par for the course for these retrogrades as well. We will see them manifest externally, but I think there will be a lot of internal conflicts. Again, are we being led by our negative emotions rather than our dreams? Are we being led by or led astray by our doubts, rather than our security of self, sense of self? The Knight of Wands is very actionable. I think is one to enact karma, which kind of reiterates my idea of Venus retrograde and Leo being kind of vengeful, in par with Eris as well, and on par with Eris, I don't know. However, rather than being just actionable, and perhaps without the proper planning, the Nine of Wands, while still being very intense, while still maintaining that kind of fire energy, can have more to do with inspiration. And again, with Saturn and Neptune, can we follow our dreams rather than our pain? Can we follow our inspirations and our joys rather than our conflicts or our needs for karma? And the King of Cups follows the softness rather than the intensity, which may be difficult to find in this world at this time. However, it does exist, and it does, and when you notice it, it can persist. But for all of this, like, gruffness, the King of Cups is finding his softness in it. And this is very much like, I said this recently to myself, but like patriarchy, soft boy patriarchy, like patriarchy of ego man, trying to overcompensate for insecurity. Soft boy in touch with their feminine side, and capable of seeking counsel, capable of understanding many opinions, and capable of taking time to ponder on those opinions before taking action, so that those decisions are weighted, and flow easily, and perhaps with path of least resistance because of that. It sounds stupid to say, but it's like, it's not war, it's peace. And that, again, with internal conflicts, is not seeking vengeance, not seeking war with yourself, and finding redemption in peace and ease and forgiveness, perhaps. And again, apply that to yourself. It's funny how forgiveness, even in situations that realistically or like in out in play, or like in play, may not be what you think it needs to be, or may not be like what you think is appropriate. However, just the thought and just the action can really give room to deep-rooted healing. It's almost like aerating the soil, rather than, tightly compacted with storms. Which is actually really funny, because this moon has been called many things, and it's a sustainable, abundant harvest to Anishinaabe people. But I've also read that in a more European perspective, has more to do with the storms that occur. So it's funny that kind of played out exactly in that way. This King of Cups is a reflective surface, like giving way to, identifying, defining all of the darkness, which is interesting too, because that is a manifested boundary, and Saturn and Neptune and Pisces may have some interesting time navigating that, because those signs can be so opposite, I suppose. There's growth in lighter thought, and that's thought that relieves emotion rather than endlessly contemplating it. It sort of evaporates the dampness, and relieves the weight of that as well. A less dense fog, if you will. Funny, he's also listening to a character again, what I said about counsel. Bottom of the deck was the Four of Swords, and that's safe space, that's grounding, that's turning your thoughts toward the soil. That's and very literally, that is a practice that is used when you take pain and you send it to the earth. When you extract your negativity and offer it to balance and offer it to be balanced. Some believe that even like adding your menstrual blood or what have you to the ground is sort of a balancing act for the amount of bloodshed and war that has occurred, and a way that we offer almost like loving forgiveness to those actions, and also ask for forgiveness from the earth. And again, like, asking for forgiveness even though we didn't do it is a difficult concept to want to entertain or enact. However, it does create some really interesting pathways in your heart when you allow forgiveness to flow throughout, even when you don't think that it's necessary, or you don't think that it's supposed to be that way, or what have you. Like, for instance, not asking for forgiveness, but meditating on the idea of forgiveness, like I'm sorry, forgive me for things that you never did, but like ultimately that you don't think you need forgiveness from. How do I say this? Like, I guess without giving myself away, I wrote a letter to family members, apologizing, and not that I need to, and not that I should, but that it was an incredible exercise in how deep my forgiveness can go, and ultimately created a lot of that for me. And not that I'm sorry that you hurt me, but I am sorry that I am such an odd and unique soul that I can only imagine not many were prepared for that, especially coming from where they were. And for that, I have great compassion. And that translates to forgiveness in my heart and outside of it. And that's not something that, ever really needs to be put into conversation. But it is a vibration that I am happy is in the algorithm of consciousness and in my own lineage and in my own history. So that's just my version of it. And I guess I'm like dumbing it down. I suppose I could talk about that more in depth, but this isn't about me. This is about you, or all of us. The Four of Swords is also, there's that crescent moon again. 4 is also a very powerful balancing number. It is a number that defines your reality in a lot of ways. And I always say, prime numbers vibrate, and you have faith in 3s. 3s is where you cultivate your belief and the things that you feel rather than see. 4 is where you see it because you felt it. And again, inverted. And I think that is finding balance and ease and working through the archetypes and the cyclical natures of our habits and our emotions, and dancing through the mythologies of that. Every direction has a purpose, and within those 4 sides, or those 4 walls, how do we feng shui our energy, or our rooms, or the palace of our homes and the palace of our minds. And I think I mean, even in yoga, every direction has its purpose. The sun rises in the east and sets in the west. So new energy begins in the east, new ideas, new cultivation, and memory and ancestry is often a characteristic of the West. And the various degrees in between also always have purpose. So in what ways do you hold energy? In what ways do you give back energy? In what ways do you do away with old cycles and those old ways of walking in circles, expecting to end up somewhere new? The Four of Swords is a reminder of home, too, and how that feels in you. It doesn't necessarily... Our homes do reflect us, but it also doesn't mean literally. I think above all, your body is your home, and above all, your heart is your home, regardless of where you are. And that is also why I'm doing this, because my heart is my home, regardless of whether or not I'm in the backseat of a rental car. There's grace, there's patience, there's contemplation, there's balance, there's rest, which are all very antithetical to this Knight of Wands kind of energy, and where we're starting. So don't shy from that spark. Your anger does serve a purpose. Your frustration does serve a purpose, but it often goes by a different name. And oftentimes, rather than seeking vengeance, is an opportunity for compassion. And again, that's not an excusing, but that is an opportunity for deeper understanding and allowing yourself to not be the oppressed, become the oppressor. In enacting this, oftentimes we become the opposite of this, and we become much like the people that have hurt us in the past. And that is a spark of information that can do anything. We can blow the fuse or we can charge. It's a manifesting point. It also kind of looks like it's within its own Stonehenge, which is interesting, because that does serve as sort of its own energy circle. And from 9 to 4 is 5 steps? So again, an issue of what... It's an issue of what you want to create with it. For the same reasons that, places on ley lines, what's that hotel in LA or what have you, where that murderer was, and Skid Row, it was a hub of energy, but that doesn't make it good or bad. That does make it an accentuator and a catalyst for whatever energy you bring forth. And I believe that of all quote-unquote haunted places and points of great entropy in the world. So make of that what you will. Make of yourself what you will. But be mindful of your emotions, and ultimately, will you be able to sleep with yourself at night because of it? Because again, this is going back home with it. And some things, when we have to leave them at the door, why is that? Is that a product, or is that because of shame? Is that because of burden? Is that because of energy that we wouldn't accept otherwise, ultimately? And if you wouldn't accept it in those circumstances, if you wouldn't accept it in this circle, then don't bring it to this circle. Does that make sense? Okay. And so we do time. I love that. That was much quieter. It was much calmer. And it just felt individual rather than clustered. And it felt smoother. Yeah, that was very different. Okay. We're going to put off of these cards because we don't want that energy. Alright. Again. Much like we're chilling. I'm sorry, I'm so tired. I'm being so intense. Much like we're chilling, again, we will take a few deep breaths and bask in the moon, wherever you are, and see what it will offer us and what it is waving to us over these next few days. Take a deep breath in and exhale. Take a deep breath in and exhale. Take a deep breath in and exhale. Interesting. I don't know why I held my hands like I did before. I don't know, to feel, and it felt like almost like weighted scales. And this time, obviously different, or like different holding, but where that was questioning weight and receiving weight. And I just smiled because I could feel that. This is more of the action of receiving. Again, more introspective, more receptive, more emotional. But it was almost like hands off, like you don't necessarily need to do something with it. Which also brings me back to that whole forgiveness thing. Like, I don't need to say these things to these people, but I do put it out into the ether. And that is an undeniable vibration, and I know that still can be felt, whether or not it's like known or not. It still can be felt, and I can only hope that serves as a catalyst experience for those people's own healing, in many situations, really. So it can exist here. And it can exist here without having to exist in, any actionable way that you think it has to, or that you think it needs to be proven as. Does that make sense? We're not looking at proof. Neptune's in Pisces. We're feeling our way through the ether and the astral realm. We're feeling our way, wading our way through the waters. Floating, treading perhaps, rather than swimming from point A to point B. Okay. 5 of clubs, 2 of spades, 4 of diamonds. There's that 4 again. funny. Um, oh. And that 2 of spades, very literally, just stop right in the center. I guess right at a crossroads. And, stop with the assumptions, stop with the expectations, stop with the rushing, stop with the feeling like it needs to look a certain way, or that, this feeling needs to be, or any feeling needs to be particularly acted on. And absolutely, there's some that need to be, when I get this and I'm in a creative place, then yes, absolutely, I'm going to act on this. But when I get this and I'm in a hurt place and an angry place and a bust the windows out your car kind of place, then yeah, no, that's not the action that we need to take. And I have held myself back from a thing or two as well. The 5 of Wands is very much, I think about the kind of person that we want to be, and do those actions represent that? Again, you don't have to prove yourself by acting out a certain thing or another or what have you. And again, will you be able to live with it when you bring it home? Or will you leave it outside of your door and hope that nobody looks through the trash? Oof, that's dark. It's fire energy still. And that is also the 5-step that I was talking about earlier, from the 9 to 4. So within that intensity, again, how do we create with it? What do we want to see in ourselves because of it? And again, that doesn't have to be any type of particular physical action, but can you look yourself in the mirror and still recognize yourself despite these feelings? And sometimes we're so hurt or so angry or so feel so betrayed that you look yourself in the mirror and you're like, a range of emotions. You could be disappointed in yourself and look at yourself and be like, how could you be so silly? Da, 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 da. I mean, I'm censoring obviously because I feel like most of us can be much meaner than that to ourselves in the mirror. But it doesn't have to be that at all. I think sometimes we can look, or in those times, maybe we are better off looking at ourselves in the mirror and being like, hell, like you did the right thing. You did the hard thing, but you did the right thing. And your soul is lighter for it, and your eyes are brighter for it, and your smile is purer for it. And the, stress that you might see on your face can, soften a little bit. And that is more inaction than it is action, and more patience than it is movement and going and all of that. And more contemplation and listening to your intuition rather than haphazard choice or I don't know. It's like literally at a fork, do you just say, fuck it and pick a direction because you are rushing yourself and frustrated? Or do you stop and listen to your intuition, or, re-navigate because of that? He even looks like he's like rolling his eyes into his head. Like maybe this is more of a meditative state and asking for where to go rather than a telling. And asking yourself and asking your, guides, your heart, your gut, your inner child, your, higher self or ideal self, your purest version of you or your most ideal version of you. Ask that how you want to feel, how you want to feel when you look yourself in the mirror, and what that looks like, so that you can be content with that and feel like those two things really do reflect each other, rather than obfuscate or hide a version of yourself or part of yourself or truth of yourself. And when you clarify that, you are able to communicate that a lot better, whether that be with all sides of yourself. Again, soft boy patriarchy, or like soft boy living life, just in tune and able to entertain all sides of who they are. And address that clearly for all the mystery that it may be. And allow that to be a steady rise into the self, which is pacing rather than rushing, which frustration and aggression, and again, that King of Wands, or the Knight of Wands and Nine of Wands energy, reiterates. And even in saying that, like Knight of Wands, kind of reiterates itself too. It just feels like redundant in my mouth. I feel like this Four of Diamonds is also like the tossing around of an idea, and of it kind of solidifying as a whole. I don't know, this ball is like giving me very full moon vibes when there's so many crescents in here. And, perhaps how we play with that, how we navigate that, how we share that experience. How do we share these experiences, What do you do on a full moon? I mean, what do you do on a full moon? No, what do you do? Bottom of the deck was the Queen of Spades, which is a hardcore sword energy, hardcore mental energy. And I think, it also kind of reiterates this pacing, and possibly even this idea of the kind of energy that is like meticulously prepared, that lends itself again to this like harvest rice moon idea, and the storms, really. Like, how do you prepare for the storm? How do you nourish yourself for the storm? Like, what is it you do? What makes you comfy on a rainy day? What are all of these little things that bring you warmth and comfort and joy and solace and peacefulness in your home and in your hearth and heart, both? It's a slower direction, but it's a slower direction because it's a direction inward, into the self, rather than outward goals, rather than gotta do this, gotta look like this, it's gotta look like this, by the end of this, I need to be this. Because I think if you push that, and if you force that, you'll find less life in your eyes. Whereas taking your time can also put a little shine back in there. Maybe there's a little bit of leisure to enjoy in the midst of storm or chaos, or resurfacing mental processes that may not be the current that you want, or the mythology that you feel fits anymore. This is also very much, I think, content with or comfortable with trying something new. Like that doesn't have to be, that level of comfort and ease doesn't have to be like hindered and confined and predictable. Again, joy comes in many forms, and I feel like the older we get, the farther, or the more distant that concept gets outside of the things we're kind of told to enjoy as an adult, if that makes sense. The Queen of Spades doesn't long for abundance either. So I think there's also very much an element of like, yes, if you feel like you're still without, you will continue to spiral in that until you find ways to make yourself feel like you're plentiful and like you have something to offer, without also feeling like you have to prove that. There's a body in the cart, which also makes me wonder if this has something to do with finally putting to rest the things that we carry around, that we cart around, that we maybe plan to use but never do. Or like, constantly put off, like planning to planning to deal with these things, planning to deal with these traumas, whatever. And constantly like putting off the things that weigh you down, or like, again, carting around bullshit. Which reiterates again this Four of Swords thing, like the emotions that we give into and the actions that we take because of that. How proud are we, and can we look ourselves in the eye, and can we bring it home to our safe space, or would we leave it at the door because it is ultimately not something we want or would stand for or put up with in our safe space? So why put up with it elsewhere? And why also be that in response? Like, how hypocritical, how weird. I know I've said this before too, but this Four of Swords cards, as chill as it is, and as grounding as it is, there is a sense of transformation in it and alchemizing with it. And for as much inaction as is in that card, alchemizing is some work, but it's not like laborious in the ways that this world is laborious. It's laborious in the ways that, like, energy is laborious. It's laborious in the ways that, like, the astral realm is laborious. It's laborious in the ways that, like, sometimes when you lucid dream, you feel like you were running in your sleep, and wake up feeling kind of that same exhaustion, I suppose. But yeah. Let's see. What else? There's to add to this Four of Swords, there's rooting in these thoughts that holds these swords down, which is again like not using our thoughts as weapons, not using them as weapons against us, and not setting boundaries for sake of weaponizing them. Which, brings me back to something that I've talked about before. I don't know if it's been on here. I think I just talked about it. But the ways that we misappropriate boundaries in place of preferences and sort of weaponize those things. The hilts of these are also kind of like laurel, and that's, a peace offering as well. And how interesting that would be the hilt of a blade. But that does decorate our thoughts rather than weaponize them again. And decorate our space with our emotions rather than weaponize them or use them as a safeguard to actual connection. Whereas the Queen of Swords wants to be able to offer and provide and share. And so with everything in retrograde and a moon in light of a storm or harvest season, how do we offer ourselves shelter and nourishment and joy? And how do we share that? Are we sharing that? Or are we not able to sustain it in such a way that we hold ourselves back from sharing it? Because it is sustainable. You don't have to hog your joy as if everybody's going to take it away. That's not what this King of Cups would do. It's the lightest card out here. I think he would shower us and brush our hair after. What an aftercare, what an aftercare. And that's also, when we come home after situations like these, how do we take care of ourselves so that we can not have to reconcile with the repercussions of our actions, especially if we can't live with them. Interesting. Time for clearing. Time for clearing, time for reconciliation, time for truth. Time for you to speak with your senses, which is also sensory cortex, pleasure palace, sensory reality. Time to clear old and make new sensory reality. Time to clean out those spaces. So that we can feel more rather than numb ourselves out in the face of intensity or intensely unexpected circumstance. That is an incredible grounding in difficult times And you know what? My body reacts very severely to my nerves or frustration. And in those moments, I mean, I feel like it's silly to say, but like longer exhales, slow your heart down, breathing through your nose, so you don't hyperventilate, so you don't like over oxidize yourself, like over, what's the word I'm looking for? I'm so tired. But breathing through your nose, long exhales through your mouth, and ultimately listening to your body too in those situations. It's not necessarily that it's asking for direct action, like, I've got to hold everything down, but it is asking for recognition. And I've learned that too a lot lately, is when my body reacts to situations that are perhaps unsafe or what have you. There's no, incredible reprimand action, but it is like, okay, trust my feeling, and how do I deal with this feeling rather than this person or that person or whatever, and either take myself out of the situation or handle it in a peaceful, understanding way, so that this feeling can, find its solace, and ultimately does. Like, I've learned to, quell some tremors because of that. And, things might get shaken up, but we can be our own balance when we center. And when we center in what we want to experience our reality as. And I don't think anybody wants their reality to hurt as much as it maybe has. So let's create from that place so that it can be better for us and for anybody that we interact with, and for, those that look up to us, younger generations. To free all sentient beings from pain and fear. Because ultimately the worst people have been hurt a lot too. Shit. Oh my. Okay. I will leave it there, because that hit me pretty heavy too. So I'm going to let you sit with that. Let you marinate. And, I'm going to marinate too. And I'm going to keep moving forward with this moon, as we all do. And I hope that your will inspires you too. Party on. I'm going to go to sleep now, though, because I'm tired. But party on. I will see you. Not goodbye, but until next time. Or, in the words of the Tselgi people, my people, Donadakoi. Not goodbye, but until next time. Party on.